In our family, it's not the first time. In 1919, in the Drajne pogrom, where 150,000 Jews were murdered, my great-grandmother was with her 3 children, including my 5-year-old grandmother, in a small village outside of Warsaw, and she heard them coming. There was a knock on the door. She shoved them under the bed and was murdered, was shot. So my sister did what her great-grandmother had done.
That was Bar Yuval Shani. Bar lives in the Beersheva suburb of Lehavim in southern Israel. Sitting with Bar on that Monday morning, November 6th, just a month after her sister and brother-in-law were brutally murdered by Hamas in front of their 16-year-old son Rotem, felt completely surreal. Their home was surrounded by woods and had a big pool in the backyard, a rarity in Israel, and it exuded an unusual calm. We even considered sitting outside on that sunny morning, but we chose to sit in her office instead because the chirping of the birds was too loud. Bar's storytelling has a tranquil, almost hypnotic quality, as if she's guiding us through a deeply personal journey. Her intense blue eyes seem to contain endless stories and complex experiences. On one hand, she was eager to talk and to tell me about her beautiful sister Shachar, who she from time to time refers to by her English name, Debbie, and her brother-in-law Shlomi. And yet the pain is still so raw and the grief so deep that at times she seems to pull back. Shachar and Shlomi Matias, musicians, educators, and activists in the Israeli-Palestinian Peace Movement, chose to make their home in Kibbutz Cholit, a community just a few miles from Israel's border with Gaza. On the morning of October 7th, around 6:30 a.m., the Hamas Al-Qassam Brigade invaded Kibbutz Cholit, launching a house-to-house attack on its unsuspecting residents. As the attack unfolded, many of the residents were still sleeping in their beds or sitting at their breakfast tables. Before it was over, the massacre claimed the lives of 12 residents, including 3 foreign kibbutz employees from Nepal and Moldova. 7 hostages were taken from Cholit. 3 of them were released on the day of the attack, just before reaching the Gaza border fence. An additional 2 were released during the subsequent Israel-Hamas hostage exchange. Tragically, 2 hostages from Cholit remain in captivity. One heartbreaking account involved terrorists breaking into the home of Adi Vital Kaplun. She was murdered in front of her 4-year-old and 4.5-month-old sons, who were then taken captive, but have since been released. IDF tanks only reclaimed control of the kibbutz after midnight, managing to clear the area of militants through a combination of force and pursuit. On that sunny morning in November, Bar guided me through the world of her sister Shachar and her family. She played their original music for me, which I decided to feature in this episode to give you all a deeper connection to who they were. But she began by sharing with me a collection of family photos. Very happy in this picture. Where are they?
This was in Amsterdam. They spent a week there shortly before the massacre. It was the first time that they had been abroad on vacation together since their honeymoon. They got married in the year 2000, so it had been 23 years. And they finally had this last chance to be together and enjoy. We are 6 children. We will always be 6 children. Even though Deborah is no longer alive. And this is 3 of us. She had a dream for us to go, the 3 of us, to a Greek island. Because we used to have a lot of fun, the 3 of us. Deborah and I were very, very close. We were both the closest other person in the world to each other. There was something in our souls that was very, very similar, and we communicated intimately and fully, and both verbally and non-verbally, and held a place for each other that we didn't share with anybody else in the world.
Who's in this picture here?
So Sunday night during Sukkot, it was even less than 6 days, I guess, before the massacre, we celebrated Deborah Shachar's 50th birthday here. Her dream had been to get together all the siblings with their spouses. We hadn't been together, all of us, in many years. And this is a picture of the 6 of us. We got together in the sukkah.
Be happy. עכשיו איכשהו אני הולך לתוכניות באנגלית. For a rebel like me. Don't be happy. Don't worry.
My sister was very beautiful. Really beautiful, stunning woman, very tall, and she had such an energy. She'd walk into a room and had all eyes on her. And this is with partners.
Yeah.
This is the last picture. Yeah.
This is the last picture that was taken with the whole
Right.
family.
Right. I was very happy. Shachar and Shlomi were musicians, and they were also peace activists. They were among the founders of the bilingual school in Beersheba. It's a school that is made up of Arabs and Jews, Muslims, Christians, and Jews. 2 teachers for each class. One teaches in Arabic, one teaches in Hebrew. And the idea was that we should get to know each other and know each other's culture and be able to respect each other and build a life together. They were committed to that. Shlomi was also the, Oman HaMecha'ah, the protest artist. Here, every Saturday night there would be protests in Israel. The big one was at Kaplan in Tel Aviv, and there was one here in Beersheba, and he rewrote words to familiar songs and would play them at a protest, and people would come to the protest just to hear him. So they were very, very active. Doing everything they could for civil rights, no matter who that meant, Arab, Jewish, anybody who wanted to live and who respected life needed to have his rights as far as they was concerned. Okay, so they made their home, I guess it was a little over a decade ago, at Cholit, a kibbutz bordering on the Gaza Strip. They didn't see Palestinians as their enemies. I remember when Deborah was in the army, she was a combat medic. And in those days, we were in Gaza. It was before the partition. And she was stationed at Khan Yunis. And I remember her stories of sitting in the ambulance and holding the hand of whoever it was who was wounded on the way to the hospital. It didn't matter if this was a Palestinian or a Jew, but she would hold the person's hand, somebody wounded by bullets, and she would sing to them. So a human being was a human being, and her job was to save lives. So it's sort of ironic what happened to her, what happened to them. musicians, civil rights activists, founders of the bilingual school where their children were educated. They left 3 beautiful, amazing children. Shir is 21, Shaked is 19, Rotem is 16. And Rotem was with them when this happened. They also had a band and performed my sister's original music, which is going to come out as an album. And they were known and very well loved.
כי אני שוכבת במיטה ולא מוצאת סיבה לקום, מעשנת עוד סיגריה וצועקת ליקום, מתקלפת מקליפות ועוד רגע אני נשברת, שזה לא קל לך להיות תמיד אחרת, אך בעצם לסיפור הזה יש סוף מאוד ברור, כי בדרך פעם אחת תצא הקו ושחרור, כי יש שקט ויש רעש ועל זה אני בונה, כי בעצם אני אוהבת להיות תמיד שונה. תודה רבה, ביאליק 26, להקת האסבסט, ולכם שבאתם.
You know, at their funeral, there were regulations. You were only supposed to have up to 50 people. And so, because of the war, because of the security situation, and we let people know that this was for family only, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people came. You couldn't keep them away. There were so many people that tried to get onto the Zoom and couldn't. It collapsed because there were just, I think there were easily thousands of people that wanted to take part. You know, I said before that Shachar and I communicated on many levels, verbal and nonverbal, and we both shared a kind of knowledge that some people may think I'm crazy for mentioning, but we shared a spiritual knowledge and spiritual experiences that made us understand that there are things beyond what we see with our eyes and hear with our ears. And one example of this is that Shachar had a recurring dream of terrorists breaking into the house, kicking down the door and shattering the glass. And she knew that she would be killed.
כן ילדה, כן ידיים דקות, כן עכשיו כבר מותר לבכות, כן מלאך כתוב ריסים ושיער, כן עכשיו כבר מותר, כבר הלילה רוגע בצח, כבר הדוד יוזף קרמר הלך, כבר הרדיו ספר ומנה, מה עשו לך כבשה מעונה.
And just maybe a month before the 7th of October, we had another conversation about her death. And she began by saying, you know, if something happens to me, I want you to promise. You know me better than anybody in the world. And I want you to promise that you will tell my children who I was. And I want you to promise that you will make sure that they know how much I love them. And, you know, I said, oh, you know, of course I promised you. And you said, no, I want you to listen to me now. And I want you to repeat everything I said, everything I say. And I said, okay, because I heard there was an urgency that I hadn't heard in a long time. And so we had a very long and very detailed conversation yet again about everything that she wanted me to say about her. We talked in detail about the 3 children and what the challenges would be for each of them if she died now. You know, they're both at different developmental stages, different places in the relationship with her. And this was just maybe a month before.
What was the main thing that she wanted you to tell her children about her?
I think I'm going to have to keep that private. and share with them as they grow older and as they're ready, each one separately, as we spoke of together. But I'm just putting this out there. This was part of living in Cholit, and it was part of who she was, a woman who embraced life and also death, who didn't deny anything. She has a tattoo that she made also just maybe a month and a half before she died. She had always wanted this, and she finally did it. A gorgeous tattoo, if you like tattoos. Very colorful, with sort of vines and a fairy and a skull. There's life and death. And part of our relationship was also that we could share, the brighter sides of life and also the darker sides. And there was room for all of it between us.
מי שצמא לכל מחווה של חסד, אוזנו תופסת, איך הקריאות חוצות את הרחוב. שואל עדיין, שואל מאין, כן מאין כוחות לשאול.
I know this is very, very difficult, but are you able to share with us the story of the 7th of October?
I will try. Saturday morning, Simchat Torah, I woke up very early to use the toilet. I had no intention of waking up. We were in the north of Israel visiting one of our daughters and our grandchildren, and my phone was being charged. I wasn't using it as a phone. It was on silent. It was there as a clock, which I had no intention of touching. It was off for the weekend, for Shabbat. But as I passed it, I saw messages sort of flashing. It caught my eye, and I saw these messages from my sister asking, "Are you okay?" And expressing concern. And there was message after message, and I realized something was not okay. And so I picked up the phone and I went in to see what was going on. And she wrote that there was a missile attack and they could hear shooting, and there was very heavy fire, and something was happening. It felt different. And she wrote, as she wrote on the family WhatsApp group, someone knocked on the door. Sounds of gunfire surrounding our home. We don't know what is going on. The family responded, and then she writes, "We'll update you. I'm frightened for the girls who are alone." Rotem, the 16-year-old, was with them. Shir and Shaked were in their private rooms in another part of the kibbutz. It's where, young adults have their own rooms. And then she forwarded a text message that said infiltration in Shderot. It's a city some way away from them. And then the next one is, it sounds like they shattered the glass at the back door. Lots of shooting. My father writes, "Lock all entrances, all attention on you." And she responds, "We did before entering the safe room, but we are really scared. The girls are in their homes, and someone can kick down our front door, and the back door is just glass. Definitely a lot of shooting on the kibbutz." So you may remember this is what she had dreamed of. At 7:47, she forwarded a text warning residents of communities bordering on Gaza to remain indoors. A number of terrorists had infiltrated from the strip, and there was no response to my aunt's text that we're praying for them. And moments later, Rotem texts, "Mom and Dad are dead." Somebody responds that this is no time for bad jokes. I mean, he is 16, and he sometimes had a funny sense of humor. And he responds, "I'm sorry." I remember for me, everything turning gray and feeling dizzy. It was difficult to breathe. My heart started beating very quickly.
Did you think he was telling the truth?
I was horrified, and I was asking myself, could this be true? Is this the bad humor of a teenager? Have they been shot? If they have been, is he mistaken? Perhaps they've only been injured. And I'm seeing my sister, my one and only beautiful, beautiful sister. And this is just in seconds. I understand that this may have happened, but it's not something you can grasp. And then he writes, I'm bleeding. And at that point, I understand that this is not a joke. There's no way this is a joke. So I've set my thoughts and feelings aside as best I can, as besides being a sister and an aunt, I'm also a psychotherapist. I do have an expertise in trauma, and I've been working with people with PTSD, and specifically people around living in their area with PTSD and with CPTSD, complex PTSD, for many, many, many years. And I realized that he needs help, and I've got to stay there with him, keep him alive. So we have a family team now that extends from the north to the south of Israel and all the way to London, where our youngest brother is on the job. We have, in addition to myself, 2 social workers trained in trauma work, a paramedic, former officer who's now a professor of neurobiology, and a huge group of very strong, capable people.
These are your siblings?
My siblings, and my parents. And we sort of divide naturally to envelop Rotem with love and give him the guidance he needs, and we accompany him on WhatsApp from afar for the next 9 hours while he is wounded and hiding from the terrorists, who will return 3 times and stand right next to him as they come to make sure that they have killed everybody. So it soon becomes apparent that Rotem has been shot, and he is lying under my sister's body. And hiding. She fell on him. What we later learn from him is that they hid in the safe room, which was not very safe, apparently. And the terrorists came in. They heard them shooting very heavily. Shlomi, my brother-in-law, held onto the door handle and tried to make sure that they wouldn't come in. My sister called Rotem and told him to get behind her, behind the bed between her and the wall. And she covered him with a blanket and made it sort of look like a heap. And she lay down on him. And the terrorists used explosives and exploded the door. They exploded their way into the safe room. My brother-in-law's last words were, "I've lost my arm." Rotem had to hear this and hear him screaming in pain. And later hearing his screams turn to gasps and sighs. And my sister was shot. They used machine gun to shoot. The whole room was shot. Rotem was also shot. A bullet penetrated his body and just missed his intestines. And he has shrapnel in his leg and above his eye. But he was saved. So he texted us from under my sister's body, where he remained for quite a while. He was having difficulty breathing, and he's describing this to us. that he can hardly breathe. The room is filling with smoke because they set fire to the living room, which is what they did. They set fire to houses to force people out so that they could shoot them or abduct them, or both. There was a lot of vandalism just for the pleasure of it. They tore cupboards off the walls. They smashed everything in sight. They looted everything that they could. They, would take a bite of fruit and then put it back in the fruit bowl. They had music on. They were laughing. They laughed as they shot my sister and my brother-in-law. And they laughed afterwards as they stood over their bodies next to my nephew. This, again, is a recurrent theme. We've heard this from many, many kibbutzim. They were having a party. They were enjoying it. This is cruelty that you cannot imagine. So, Rotem is lying there under my sister's body, and he can't breathe, and he has to hide because the terrorists are still there. He can hear them. And we tell him to mute the phone. He says he has. He's begging for help. We ask him to send his location and tell him that we are getting in touch with security officials, and 2 people on our family team get in touch with the army, with the ambulance, with the person responsible for security at the kibbutz. But of course, nobody can do anything. We don't know yet that 3,000 terrorists have infiltrated Israel and attacked multiple locations, and there's nobody there. There's nobody to help. So Rotem, after a while, when things become quiet and he can no longer breathe, escapes to the laundry room. He took some water, a drink of water, a bottle of water. The smoke was still very, very thick. In fact, he walked into something as he was walking out, which he only later realized when he returned and the smoke had cleared, that it was his father's body. So we helped him to lie low and bandage himself. He was still bleeding. He was in pain. He had taken a course in first aid, and he's an amazing kid. He has his own strength. Let me make clear that he has his own strength. It wasn't that we were the only ones keeping him going, but he did need to be accompanied, obviously. He needed to cough. He was afraid to cough. He was afraid they would hear him. So we, suggested taking a piece of material and placing it over his mouth, and basically attended to physical, emotional, cognitive, spiritual aspects of this experience for the next 9 hours. One of my daughters, the one that we were visiting, has a physician neighbor, and so she gave her phone to the physician, and from time to time Rotem would make a recording of himself, which we would share with the physician, and they corresponded, and she could hear from his breathing. She could learn something about his physical condition from his breathing. So at that point we didn't know, in the beginning, could he not breathe because he was under my sister's body, or could he not breathe because he was shot in the lungs? He was in pain. Do we tell him to press on it, or is that going to move the bullet? We don't know where the bullet is. If there's a bullet, we had no idea. She got him. She instructed him on how he could check himself. He took a picture of his wound and sent it to us. So that gave us some information and was helpful in giving him some more guidance. She also got a team of traumatologists on board to assist. But Rotem is also expressing losing hope and feeling extremely helpless, and we needed to attend to that. He wrote that he could do nothing and that he couldn't wait anymore. So, for instance, I wrote to him that waiting is actually doing something. And we tried to reframe his helplessness and his sense of failure, his guilt, pointing out his incredible bravery and his success in protecting himself, in alerting us, in sending us the necessary information to receive help, in keeping in touch with us and with others on the kibbutz, and waiting. And we framed that as his mission. This is your mission. A, you protect yourself. 2, you send your location. 3, you continue communicating with us until we can get you out. We can't answer his recurrent question as to when help will arrive, but we could validate how difficult it is to bear uncertainty.
Did he have a charger for his phone?
No, he didn't. He was at 4% when he was rescued, at about 5. And we were lucky. At some stage, he stole into the house at 10:53. He sent a recording. I'm back home. There really isn't any smoke, but now I can actually say their mom and dad aren't alive. I'm so sorry. At this point, for me, I couldn't breathe. My feelings and thoughts and physical sensations were just surging like a tidal wave, and I began to shake. I knew that that was good. It's a relief of traumatic energy. So I let myself shake a little bit and sort of made the shaking larger so I could get some of that energy out and return to being present for him. That was really hard. This is my sister. This is the closest person to me in the world besides my husband. And the images were terrible, but I didn't have time for that. He's asking for his sisters. He can't reach them. We can't reach them. One of my daughters, who is a social worker, trained in trauma work, reports that his older sister Shir notified her that she and Shaked were entering a safe area in which there was no reception. They were safe. She texts him. Many hours later, she will tell me privately that their last communication actually took place early in the morning, but we do not share this information with him. And thank God they were in safe areas and the terrorists didn't get to them. They had their own story because they had seen the description of what was happening. They heard the shooting. They knew there were terrorists, but they were disconnected. There was no reception. The last thing they heard was mom and dad are dead. And they thought maybe it's a bad joke and maybe it isn't. So they didn't know if it was a bad joke or their parents were dead. Shir, the older one, tended to think that it might be true, but she didn't know. And then she was very concerned. Maybe they were dead, but what about Rotem? They were putting their prayers and their hopes on him. At least he should survive, but they didn't know. So in the afternoon, I hear that Rotem is ready to give up. And he can't take it anymore. He can no longer lie in hiding. He can't just do nothing. And I'm imagining this devastated, wounded, standing up, allowing himself to be discovered and shot. I search for a creative response that might shift things even a tiny bit in this extremely traumatic and limited situation. So I make suggestions that address all aspects. For instance, if he's lying there and he can't lie there physically for so many hours without moving, can he wiggle his toes? Can he wiggle his fingers? Can he breathe to the areas in which he is experiencing pain? Can he go in his mind to an activity or a place that feels pleasant and safe and imagine it, and so on? And I write to him that in times of war, people have survived hiding in the forests or in holes in the ground for months, sometimes years. And he has joined the group of heroes. So I try to, encourage a sense of belonging and mastery and connection. When we finally are reunited, We find a very handsome young man covered in heavy soot from head to toe from the fire. It will take several showers to get the soot and the smell out of him. He has wounds from the smoke, and he has 2 surgeries to get the bullets out and the shrapnel out. His sisters will be rescued physically safe many hours later, and they're evacuated with other members of the kibbutz to a different kibbutz and spend the night there, and in the morning are accompanied by soldiers. They've gotten special permission to join us, and I meet them at the hospital and bring them up to see Rotem, where they are finally reunited and they begin piecing their story together.
Shortly after being taken to the hospital, NBC News conducted a short interview with Rotem.
Our reporters are just beginning to cover some of the harrowing stories coming out of the terror attack. James Longman spoke with a 16-year-old in Israel who barely made it out alive.
Yeah, good morning, George. Shachar and Matias is 16 years old and is Israeli-American. I've just spoken to him here at the hospital, surrounded by his family. He was shot in the attack that killed his mother and father. They were killed right in front of him. A warning, this may be difficult to watch.
The terrorists opened the door, shot. They threw a grenade or something. It exploded. The last thing my dad said is he lost his arm, and then my mom died on top of me. I just stopped my breathing. I lowered it down as much as I possibly could. I didn't move. I was terrified. I didn't make any noise. And I prayed for any God. I didn't really care which God. I just prayed for a God that they won't find me.
It was extraordinarily emotional sitting there talking to Rotem and his family, especially Elan, their grandfather. They have such a bond with him. This family has been ripped apart.
I want to add that what happened to my sister and brother-in-law and Rotem, and specifically her protecting her child and giving her life in order to save him, is, in our family, it's not the first time. In 1919, in the Drajne pogrom, where 150,000 Jews were murdered, which is the most terrible pogrom, the most terrible massacre before the Holocaust, as this was the most terrible massacre after the Holocaust. My great-grandmother was with her 3 children, including my then 5-year-old grandmother, in a small village outside of Warsaw, and she heard them coming. There was a knock on the door, like there was a knock on the door in Cholit. She shoved them under the bed and was murdered, was shot. So my sister did what her great-grandmother had done. It's happening again. People must understand that this is happening again. There's no point in being politically correct about this. I cannot bear to hear anybody saying, oh, this is because of the conflict, and Gaza is occupied, which it actually is not. It is not occupied. There's a government, it's the Hamas government, who is bent on massacring Jews, first in Israel, but after that anywhere in the world. And after the Jews, the Christians, anybody who isn't Muslim should be murdered. And it's very important that people understand that. This is not about being politically correct. There's nothing political. There's nothing correct. This is evil. This is pure evil. My daughter is 20. She serves in the IDF in a base that was overtaken by Hamas and then released. She has had many friends and commanders killed. She is now waiting to be able to attend the funeral of a good friend in her closest circle. A beautiful, beautiful, beautiful young woman. There isn't enough left of her to bury. And there are many people in this position. The Hamas terrorists not only laughed and played music and vandalized and enjoyed killing, but they terrorized, they abused, they raped, they beheaded children, they mutilated bodies, they mutilated living people while they were alive, families around a table, cutting off different parts of the body for each of them, mother, father, small children, and then letting them suffer while they ate. People were burned to death, families, children tied together and then burned to death, tied together, mutilated, raped. I imagine that from the depth of my traumatic mourning for my sister and my brother-in-law, and my pain for what happened to them, for what happened to Rotem, for what he had to witness and hear, and will carry with him for the rest of his life, as will we. I find myself thinking, thank God they weren't mutilated while they were still alive. Although that isn't quite precise, because Shlomi actually was. He lost his arm. His hands were actually insured because he was a musician. And I wonder what that meant to him was in his final moments when he realized that he had lost his arm. Did he think, oh my God, my fingers, I won't be able to play again? But I actually find myself thinking, as horrible as this was, better they be dead more quickly and not have to undergo more and more and more and more pain. We don't know what the hostages are undergoing, but have no reason to believe that they're being treated in a humane way. There's nothing humane about any of these people, of the Hamas terrorists. So people need to wake up. It's not enough. It's not enough just to listen. You must make a stand. You must put pressure on. You must take action and make sure that the world speaks up and uses all its pressure to end this terrible, terrible evil.
Can you just tell us a little bit about the kids? What's going on with them and his sisters right now? Where are they and how are they coping?
Shachar and Shlomi are at a kibbutz in the south, which has taken in the survivors from their kibbutz, so they're all together. Rotem has moved in with my brother, who has a son about his age, and he will be his legal guardian, and we will all help together in attending to other needs, but he will be the legal guardian and bring him up in his own home with my sister-in-law. It's very difficult, and there's a personal as well as a collective pain here. This isn't an ordinary death. It's not, it would be terrible if their parents had died in a car accident or something. It would have been awful. But the layers, the multi-layers of this tragedy go so deep. The entire country is traumatized. People's world perspective, our beliefs, the way we see life has been, there are cracks, if not shattered. Just think about my sister and brother-in-law who were peace activists and believed in coexistence, and what happened to them. It took 9 days to identify my sister's body so that we could bury them. According to Jewish tradition, you bury people as quickly as possible, hopefully on the same day of their death. 9 days. 9 days until we could bury them and begin Shiva. What is beautiful to see is that people are coming together, and despite differences, despite the split that I'm sure Hamas was happy to see during the protests, there is an incredible outpour of generosity and solidarity and, the true Jewish spirit. And not only the Jewish spirit, the Israeli spirit, because there are many Arabs, many Bedouins who have given their lives, who gave their lives to save Jews. There were Bedouins who were murdered in the massacre, not as many as Jews, and but they were there too. And there's a great spirit of solidarity today that I hope we are able to nurture, and not just let things slide back again.
The story is so hard for us to hear, for me to hear. I'm sitting here holding back tears, as are you, and I'm sure all of our listeners as well. The only thing I'd like to say to you, maybe on behalf of our listeners, is something which you know already, because you said it, but that is the whole good world, the world of good people, are with you and stand behind you, and the Jewish people are together and praying for you and your family to be able to move forward, to be able to heal. And Am Yisrael Chai, and your strength gives us strength, so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for contributing. That really, really moves me. These are children who are left with no parents, with no home. Their home was burned, no possessions. Their parents' phones were stolen. Pictures are gone. The community has been evacuated. They really came here with nothing. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
This is Israel Take 3, and I'm David Began. The music on this episode was either written or performed by Shachar and Shlomi Matias. I'm reaching out to our listeners today. Let's help Rotem and his sisters who were left orphans on that horrific day. I posted a link to a GoFundMe campaign for the children in the show notes. Please donate and share the link. And feel free to reach out to me on WhatsApp or send me a personal email at rabbibegan@gmail.com if you need this link. Thank you for listening and for becoming a witness. This last song was recorded by Shachar and Shlomi in Bar's living room 6 days before October 7th.
כן, אך אולי ממשיך להתקדם אל תוכה ולהשתחרר ואני עצובה נמאס לי מהשאלות הנוקבות חסר לי קצת שקט משהו בשגרה מתערפל השגרה מתמשכת מתאזרחת בינינו, התפריט בינינו, מה טוב ומה רע. אוהבת לדעת, חסר לי השקט, חסרה גם הפראות. ואני עצורה בין שערה לתמימות. אני אוהבת אותך, מחפשת תשובה, משתפת אותך, כואבת אותך. רגע כן, אך אולי ממשיך להתקדם מתוך הערפל ומשתחרר. ואני עצובה, נמאס לי משאלות המפות. חסר לי קצת שקט, משהו בשגרה מתערפל. חסר לי קצת שקט, משהו בשגרה מתערפל. חסר לי קצת שקט, משהו בשגרה מתערפל. משתחרר, מתגלגל, מתבלבל, מתבלבל. משתחרר, מתגלגל, מתבלבל.